All right, so a democratically elected former president is going to jail. Jacob Zuma found guilty of contempt of court. He's got 5 days to report to prison or face being taken there by the police. And I'm joined now by political analyst, lawyer and member of the Defend Our Democracy movement, Judith February. Judith, thank you so much for joining us. So what is your response, first of all, to the judgment and also the criticism from the Zuma camp that this was a very emotional judgment? What do you make of that?
Good evening, Sally. I thought that it was an excellent judgment by the majority of the court, 7 of the 9 judges. There were 2 dissenting. It was a very detailed judgment and certainly a tour de force by Acting Chief Justice Sisi Kampembe. She did not hold back with regard to her disapproval of the former president's egregious acts towards the court, his display of utter contempt for the Constitutional Court. It sits quite nicely with the other judgment in the eNCA matter handed down by Chief Justice Mogoeng at the time, where he was equally scathing of Jacob Zuma's disregard for the Constitution. Emotional, I think it was strongly worded, probably as strong. I think it was Nicole Fritz who said that it was like spitting fire, and it certainly was. But plenty of reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned the 2016 judgment by Chief Justice Mogoeng, where he found that President Zuma then had failed to uphold, defend and respect the Constitution. Let's just remind ourselves, relating to his refusal to be bound by the public protector's findings that he unduly benefited to upgrades to his eNCA home and that he should pay back the money. That was a big deal back then, but compared to that, which is more significant, do you think?
Well, in a sense, they're both significant because at the time the political forces are great. So then and now, always greater, Sally, when you're dealing with an individual who is in the highest office in the land. And here you're dealing with the powerful figure within our society, somebody who held office for nearly a decade and whose much of his presidency is under the spotlight at the Zondo Commission. In a sense, though, today felt as if it felt like a final drawing of a line in the sand by the Constitutional Court, protecting and defending its authority. As Acting Chief Justice Kampembe said so well, the Constitutional Court relies on the document itself, which gives it the moral authority. It has neither the purse nor power, I think she said, to do anything else. It can't ask armies to march in its defense. The armies are you and me and the courts who protect and defend the rights of the poorest of the poor. And Sally, what was quite interesting is when she was talking about, she did a segue in the judgment, when she was talking about the question of corruption, and she talked about the way in which corruption actually undermines the aspirations of the Constitution, undermines the fulfillment of human rights. And that's a really important point. So this feels to me like it's a big moment in our post-apartheid constitutional democracy. Nkandla was at a different time, but this is equally important.
Judith, I know that you're a keen political watcher as well. We've already seen in Nkandla that his family, his son Edward, telling Siphamandla Goga, our reporter, that he will be prepared to die before he allows his father to be taken to prison. We know that the MVA is absolutely furious about the fact that he's going to jail. I spoke to Aubrey Machikli a little earlier. He's concerned that this might actually be a bit of a powder keg. Do you really think it could get violent?
Well, Sally, my view is that what we're going to hear for the next 5 days, there will be a lot of noise. There will be possibly vigils and campaigns around this. Former President Zuma has never gone quietly. He's not going to present himself quietly without conjuring up the masses or trying to in a time of COVID. He's always put his own interests ahead of the country and ahead of the people who support him. So it will be no surprise. There are also many individuals who are opportunistically attaching themselves to this populist movement. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw protests, if we saw some form of mass mobilization. And in South Africa, it doesn't take much for things to turn violent. I do think, though, that the next 5 days will be important. I think also for the media in the way in which it uses this moment. Today, I think, was a teachable constitutional moment, important for the rule of law. And I do think our focus needs to be on the Constitutional Court and the way in which it asserted its authority today. And if there are breaches by Jacob Zuma, then the law and the independent institutions need to act. The next 5 days will be crucial, but it is important that we separate the noise that there will be. Many people will die for Zuma. Many people have said they would in the past, and here we still are. So it is time that we meet the rhetoric, and that if that is the final moment, that we need to face up to what Zuma wants to unleash in terms of political forces, then the state needs to do its job as it should in a democracy on behalf of all of us and on
I'm going to ask you a question that is slightly tangential, but I already see in some of the narrative, some of the noise, that it is being framed in this context. Apartheid crimes have not yet been prosecuted, despite a recommendation by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that these be pursued. This is now coming to light around Ahmed Timel. Increasingly, we saw an issue with this at the SCA in Bloemfontein this week. Isn't it going to sit badly with South Africa that we're sending a democratically elected former president to jail, but at the same time it's coming more and more to light that there was very little political will to imprison those who refused to comply with the Truth Commission and committed apartheid crimes?
Well, Sally, I think one's got to be able to hold two thoughts at once. And so you can look at the Jacob Zuma matter, and indeed, as Judge Kampembe said so eloquently, judgment, it is trite that he is in contempt. And actually, it wasn't a very difficult legal case. Every day in our courts, people are tried for contempt. So we have to be able to hold that thought and to look at Jacob Zuma's conduct and to say that it has been egregious, he is in breach of the Constitution and all of the things that the court found, not only in this instance, but previously, and that he needs to meet his punishment. As he said, he always will. There's been a fair democratic process. Indeed, Sally, we can look at the consequences of state capture, and every day all of us are feeling it, whether it's the failure to provide TERS to people who are suffering in this pandemic, our inability to roll out vaccines, the hollowing out of state institutions, rolling blackouts. We can name the consequences of the Zuma presidency and of state capture. So we can hold that thought. At the same time, we can hold the thought that as Eike Krok put it in her poem, Country of Grief and Grace, if the old do not confess, then it makes it very difficult, it makes it very easy for the new to continue in the same vein. And what she's talking about is accountability for historic crimes. And that is a conversation that I think needs to be dealt with sensitivity. It is a conversation that is long past us having it, and is at the root. It is the pea under the mattress, in a sense, of post-apartheid South Africa, how we hold those to account and how we deal with issues of redress. And the more unequal our society becomes, the more urgent those calls for redress will be, and also for people to be held to account for apartheid-era crimes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That was political analyst, lawyer, and a member of the Defend Our Democracy movement, Judith February.